I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Today is Friday. It's the 4th of April, 2025. Fridays, we call the program the Healing Circle, and I'm pleased to be in company in the presence of my colleagues and my leaders, Dr. BraVada Garrett-Akinsanya and Dr. Oliver Williams, healers in this community and in the world, and pleased to be in a great conversation. As always, we promise a robust conversation about the issues, the topics at hand. And today's program is a special one. It's a revisit to a conversation we had earlier. Our special guest joining us in a couple of seconds is brother Dominique Williams, I think the name is.
Waltower.
And, yeah, Waltower, that's it. Sorry, Dominique Waltower. Thank you. And we're going to be talking about, this notion of moving from abuse to accountability and fatherhood. And I'll have Dr. Oliver sort of do the introduction and set the conversation up. But we always begin with a certain protocol to get us centered. Before we do that, I want to invite those who are checking in already on any of the social media platforms to like, share, and prepare to comment. And then let somebody know that we're here in the conversation with Al McFarlane in the Healing Circle. Also, share to your networks and email list and friends list. Ask them to check us out. We want you to also subscribe, be a subscriber. We're trying to grow the channel, and we want the subscriptions to come primarily through YouTube, the Insight News YouTube channel. Go there, hit the like button, hit the share button, become a subscriber, and we thank you so very much. Well, with that, let me invite Dr. B to set this program on its course. Dr. B, how you doing?
I'm doing much better today, and I'm so happy to be among some of my favorite Black men in the whole wide world. And I'm really honored to be here today as we set out to talk about domestic violence, domestic peace, parenthood, fatherhood, and humanity, and how we put that in our space. So as we begin today, we always start out with our African ritual of the healing circle. We imagine ourselves once again being drawn together in a circle, even though distance may part us. It's a virtual circle. And in the healing circle of our African community, there's no beginning or no end, no top or bottom. Everyone in the circle has equal access to the center, to have voice, which is the space of power. So no matter who you are, you have something to contribute. And we also start the circle because we use this space to honor our elders, because we learned, hoped, and were prayed for. Our existence sits here as an embodiment of many generations of hopes and dreams. So we stand here to acknowledge the shoulders we stand on. Sit here to acknowledge the shoulders we stand on, and we are grateful for the love, the prayers, the hopes, and the dreams that got us here. In addition to that, we honor our ancestors, because our ancestors were the shoulders that our elders stood on. And as we sit in this space of help and healing, we acknowledge that our ancestors are honored because they're closest to our Creator. We sit in this space, and I invite you to just take a deep breath and blow out any stress. Once again, just deep breath. As the Creator gives you breath, and with each breath, you have a chance to start over. It's a new way. One breath away, I was. This breath, I am. And as we breathe, I ask you to look to your right and notice your space of safety. Look at your left and notice your space and safety. I invite you to look behind yourself and notice that you're safe in this space. As you sit here, I want you to feel your feet on the floor, the chair that holds you, the security of being in the present, in this moment, in this now, taking a time just to be in this special, glorious, loving space of our virtual session. As we sit here, noticing our ancestors bear witness to who we are becoming. We notice in this circle that African people are an orderly people. We use a talking stick. It's virtual and it comes from one to another. But if the spirit moves and you don't get the stick yet, you can ask for it and it shall be given to you. So in this space, your voice, your spirit is welcome. And as we begin this healing journey, one more time with our brother Dominique, we just ask that he be enveloped with the spirit of his light and his wisdom and his love and his courage, and that all of us who fall party to hearing him, we be forever affected by the kind and loving growth of his spirit. And through that, we say Ashe to our elders, Ashe to our Baba Al, Ashe to our creator. And here's the talking stick, Baba Al. I give it to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And what a wonderful protocol that we use to get centered on the conversation. I want to pass the talking stick right on to Dr. Oliver Williams. Dr. Williams, and again, apologies. I mixed up your name and Brother Dominique, so
it's okay.
Forgive me. But thank you both for being here and being who you are and for the clarification. So, Dr. Williams, I'm passing the talking stick to you. Set the meeting up and let's get going.
Well, I've had the pleasure of working with Dominique, golly, for the last, I think, 5 years or so. And, when I came in contact with him, I got a chance to listen to his story and his wisdom and his growth and his change and something that I think a lot of people need to listen to and to absorb. If you want to listen to Dominique tell his story, you can go to Will, that's WILL, the digit 2, not TO, not TWO, not TOO, but digit 2, number 2, change. So will2change.org. And you'll get a chance to listen to Dominique tell his story. You'll get a chance to hear his ex-wife, Mary Hernandez, tell her story. You'll get a chance to hear them talk together and to share their insights about change and transformation and abuse. Now, you wouldn't know it to look at this young man, but he's got, how old is are your sons? 3 sons?
Yeah, so Alex is 32, Dante's 27, and Skip just turned 23, or he's about to turn 24.
Wow, and I've got a chance to interact and do workshops with 2 of his sons and his ex-wife Mary, and the wisdom that comes from their stories and their growth is so important. So Dominique has traveled around the world doing presentations around the issue of domestic violence. He's got a practice in San Diego where he does groups with men who batter. He does work with the military and has trained a lot of people in the military and young men that are in the military around the issue of domestic violence, which is real important because, in some of the Department of Defense previously, in the previous administration, gave some attention to this issue. And there were some places that had some real challenges around it. I used to do training with the military too in Fort Sam, but also around the world. And I've been sent to Germany 3-4 times to do training with the folks there in their family advocacy. And Dominique has done some interesting things in terms of going to Australia and going to other places around the world to educate around the issue of domestic violence and working with men who batter. I'm going to have Dominique sort of tell a little bit about his story, but what I want to let you know is that he's the real deal. He's not counterfeit. And one of the things that I also appreciate about him is, and I always say this, we talked about working with children. We talked about fatherhood. And then one of the things that he said that got my attention is he ended up saying that he talked to his sons and he asked his sons to give him and his ex-wife a Yelp review about parenting. I said, what? And he explained it to me, he gave them a rating scale. And one of the things that I appreciated about Dominique too is the statement about preparing himself to be a good father, to be that safe space that his children could go to when he didn't feel as though it was a safe space at the beginning. And having done presentations with his sons and with his ex-wife, it's been an honor and very insightful to be able to draw from their wisdom. And we don't do it enough, to try to figure out what the success stories are and people that do good work and feel as though they want to contribute to helping people to improve and to do better. So with that, I want to turn it over to Dominique. But one of the things that I wanted to start with as I turn it over to him is to ask the question, what do you think causes men to be violent towards their partners? You can start where you want, but make sure you cover that bit.
Okay, and I just want to thank you for that introduction. I appreciate that, Dr. B and Al. It's really good here to be with you all, and I'm grateful to be here anytime I get to share this story, this knowledge, this wisdom that has been passed to me. I want to pass it to others because it was not just for me; it's for whomever else is supposed to get it. So I'm very grateful for that. I will start with your question, sir. Why do men batter? There is a myriad of reasons. There's not one reason for a man to use violence. Speaking for myself, it was a learned behavior. As a child, I grew up in an environment where domestic abuse was a normal thing. I grew up in the 80s in Chicago, and it was just normal. And it was in that I'm in that generation where it was considered a family issue. We all remember that. It was like, oh yeah, you guys figure that out. And so my neighbors knew about it, my friends knew about it, but no one said anything about it. And it was just a normal thing to see things flying across the house, to see things, people arguing and fighting, yelling and screaming. It just became a normal thing. And I always talk to people about this in the classes I teach. I say we have to be careful about things that we normalize. Because, I didn't understand it until I was in a relationship and I was perpetrating those same behaviors to where it was normal. And I remember my ex-wife saying to me, she said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Nothing. What's wrong with you?" And I was serious. I was serious. Like, what's wrong with you? This is normal. Like, what's wrong with you? And, growing up in that environment was, that's where the seeds were planted. And I want to say this as I'm speaking about this, I learned this from my mother. My biological father was not in the home, but he's the one that was, from what I understand, he was very, very abusive, which is the reason my mom left him. And then when she left him, I saw her as a victim in another relationship and then saw her as an abuser in a different relationship. Now, I bring this up for both of my parents, not to blame them, but to just give you context. This is not blame. I've gone through my healing journey. I understand my mom and my dad had their own level of issues. Who put them in that place where they learned that behavior as well? And then who put my grandparents in? So it's not about blame. It's just about giving context. I needed to understand where this behavior came from. After my divorce, as I was going through my divorce, I started going to therapy, and being in therapy was something I say this all the time. It was one of the best things that happened to me, to be able to go and sit. And I consider therapy going to the University of You. So I got a PhD in me. So, I'm Dr. Tom, and because I wanted to know about myself. I wanted to know who I was. How did I become an abusive man? How did that happen? And so for me, like I said, it was something that started in my childhood, and it was something that carried on into my adult life. And again, growing up in the generation where I can't remember one single conversation about domestic abuse for growing up. Like panels like this, it was nothing. There was zero. It was a desert. And I don't remember hearing anything. And, you know, which normalized it even more. And, you know, getting back to your question, Dr. O, there are a multitude of reasons. You know, when you talk about the basics of it, it is power and control. It is insecurity. It is fear. It is fear-based, and most offenders won't tell you this, but we are extremely fearful and scared. It's the little boy inside of us trying to control the environment because we are afraid of what's going to happen. And so, you know, our families, in a sense, become hostages. They become hostages to you, and you have to keep them there. So the home is run by fear. That fear that emanated from me was projected onto everyone else, you know, and that's the sad part about it. But growing up in that environment, like I said, really had a big influence on me. And again, it wasn't until my divorce, until when my ex-wife had enough. She's like, enough, you know, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do this. And the last time she left. And then when she left that last time, I really had to face myself at that time. She had left many times before, and I went into salesman mode when she would leave. You know, I would sell, you know, tell her whatever she wanted to hear and, you know, to get her back into the home. And then she would come back because she loved her family. But the last time she left, I knew she was gone. She moved out the house. She took my sons and she was gone. And so that moment was a come to Jesus moment for me, so to speak. It was just, okay, what happened? How did I get here? And that's when I had the enlightenment. I recognized that this is me. Like, this is my problem. Now, before her, I had another relationship where domestic abuse was the issue. And I brought domestic abuse to that relationship. So I remember sitting in my home, and my wife had gone and my kids are gone. I remember sitting in my home, and I'm sitting in my home by myself because they're gone. And I'm just really looking back at my life. And I recognized that I had domestic violence in my childhood. I had domestic violence in my first relationship. I have domestic violence in my marriage. So the common denominator is not easy. I was pretty good in math. Like, it's easy. It was me. And I said, you know, I cannot move. I can't do this. And I was so frustrated at myself at that time because I didn't like myself. You know, I did not like myself. I secretly despised myself. I hated who I was, and I did not want to be that person, but I did not know how to get out without telling somebody what I had done. So I had to expose myself in order to heal myself. So shortly after, you know, she left, I recognized that I was the issue. I left my home. I was in Los Angeles, and I moved back to San Diego, and I started a journey of just healing. I had about a year and a half off of work where I just said, I just need to focus on myself. And that's when I started therapy, and I started going to therapy. And that journey lasted for about three and a half years. And it was a combination of individual therapy and group therapy. It was a combination of secular, church, men's only. It was co-ed. It was a bunch of different places because I was hungry to heal. I needed to heal. And this was not about getting my relationship back. No, I knew that was over, as it should have been. So I started the journey of healing and working on myself. And like I said, going to therapy was one of the best things that ever happened to me. In therapy, I learned that I was suffering from depression. I didn't know that. I had no idea that I had mild to severe depression. I didn't know that. That's not an excuse for my behavior. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying that, but I never knew that. I was like, I'm not crying in the corner, you know. And my therapist said, well, another way that depression manifests in men is anger. And I didn't know that. And so got that treated, started working on myself, and started working on my mental health, working on discovering who I was. And then once I got to a place where I felt, you know, I was at a balanced level of healing, then I was like, okay, I need to make sure I go back and talk to my sons. That's when Dr. O, I had that conversation with them about the Yelp review. So the way that goes is that the Yelp review was this. I was in therapy one day, and my therapist asked me, he said, well, how are your sons doing? I said, oh, they're okay. I gave them the performative stuff. You know, they're playing sports, they're doing good in school. But I said, no. How are they doing? You and your mom are not together anymore. Have you checked in with them? I said, no, not really. And he said, maybe you should. I said, you know what? I think I will. So I sat them all down, and then they thought they were in trouble. So I had to give them at ease, soldier, permission to speak. Just relax. You guys are not in trouble.
How old were they, Dominique?
So at the time, I think the oldest at the time, Alex, was like 11. So that means Dante would have been like probably 7, and then Skip was like 5. Like so they were young. They were young.
Mm-hmm.
And then at this time, no, actually they were a little bit older than that. Okay, because Skip was he was conversing. So Skip was about 7. So Alex was probably about 13. So they were a little bit older than that. So I sat them down and I gave them permission to speak. And then one thing that really changed, and when I was talking to them, they didn't want to speak. But then I told them, I said, hey, listen, Daddy's trying to get better and be a better father and be a better, be a better man. And when they heard that, they opened up.
Wow.
They were like, they heard that. I was like, oh, this is for you to get better. And then I asked them, I said, so what do you guys think about, us parenting you, your relationship with, mom and myself, me as a father. And then Dante just bust out at that moment. He said, y'all suck.
It tickles me every time you tell me that. So it looks like
shocked to hear it, but then I was like, oh, tell me how you really feel. He said, y'all suck. And then after that, I think Alex jumped in and he said, yeah, all you guys did was fight and argue. And then Skip said, we couldn't wait for y'all to get divorced. Think about that. Think about it. And we know what most children want. They want their parents together. So my kids surpassed that and said, you guys shouldn't be together. Like, we appreciate y'all getting us here, but y'all need to go your separate ways, And when I thought about that, it just blew my mind to hear that. But, as brokenhearted as I was to hear that, I was also grateful that we had made the right decision in stepping away from each other, because our relationship was traumatizing to them. Here we are thinking we're doing each other, our kids, a favor by staying in the same home because we don't want them being in a broken home, right? Not understanding that our home was broken with us in it. And so the irony in our circumstances, our children have seen more peace and love between us since we have been separated than they ever saw when we were together. And this is not a plug for divorce, but for toxic relationships, yes, separation needs to happen. I talk to men about this all the time. That separation period for me was extremely profound. It was extremely profound because I didn't have her to focus on. I could just focus on me, because during the relationship, that's one of the dynamics in toxic and abusive relationship is there's so much focus on each other, and the abuser's trying to control everything they do, and she was gone, so I didn't have anything, and I just put it all inward, So that was a really, really good process for me to be alone during that healing journey, and so. When my kids said that to me, like I said, it was hurtful to hear, but I was glad that they didn't have to carry it and that they felt safe enough to speak their truth. And since then, it has been a journey of healing for all of us. They've all gone to therapy at different times themselves. Sometimes us as parents will go with them. Sometimes they've seen all of us go. So it's a normalized thing. They saw me going. They saw me. I was like, what are you doing, Pop? I got therapy appointment. I'll see y'all when y'all get back. It was a normal thing, just like going to the store. And so for them, they know to get help when they're struggling. So Skip, the 23-year-old, a couple years back, he was going through a breakup and he calls me up. It's like, Pop, I'm struggling. I was like, okay, come on, let's talk. So we sat down and just had a conversation. I said, let's meet, a couple of times a week so we can talk about what's going on with you. And then, one of the times we were meeting, he's like, Pop, I think I need to go to therapy. Cool. Let's go. Like, when do you want? Who do you want to see? When do you want to start? And it was his suggestion. It was he thought that it was something that was going to be beneficial to him, which I was proud of him for doing that. So all of them have gone at different times. Now, I will say this too. We don't get out scot-free. I've also seen the trauma play out in my son's lives too. I've seen them making decisions. I've seen them doing things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know that's a direct result from some of the things that they were exposed to, you know. And so I've seen, and so my job, and I've taken this stance is that how do I love them through their process? You know, how do I love them through whatever it is that they're going through? Because that's my job, not to get upset with them, just like, okay, well, I wouldn't do that. Okay, but how do I love you through this? You know, and so that's something for me that is very important. And then also another huge piece of this was making peace with their mom. And so making peace with her throughout my healing journey, I had to work on forgiveness of a lot of people, from my parents, myself. And then, you know, I had to get to a place where her and I could be on speaking terms, and I had to lead that. Because when we stopped our relationship, she wasn't exactly nice. As she was like, okay, I'm out, you know what? And I'm throwing the book at you. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, all right. But I stayed in character and who I was, and just said, okay, I understand why you feel the way that you feel, but I'm going to still be respectful, and I'm going to treat you with respect. And I want my sons to see that too. And so throughout the years, it was just me staying true to who I was becoming and who I was. And then eventually she came around. You know, she came around because she saw that, okay, he's not joking around, because she heard that I was changing many times before. And so she was like, he's not joking around. He's actually serious this time. And she could tell by the way I would respond to things. Whereas I would blow up before, I was like, no, okay, there's no need to blow up. And again, this wasn't performative to get her back. It was just me being who I was at this stage in my life. You know, and one commitment I made was that, listen, I said, you know, we fought all throughout the marriage. I'm not going to waste the rest of my life fighting with you when we're outside of the marriage too. Like, what are we doing that for? So I said that I had to create an environment of peace and safety for my son and for her. You know, so because her and I still had to co-parent our children. And so we had to have regular conversations about what was going on with them. We had disagreements, but it didn't have to turn into this, you know, bloodbath. And, you know, it didn't have to. So since then, it's been a healing of myself, healing of my sons, and healing of the relationship with her. And, you know, to the point where we go to our sons' events together. We just were in Colorado together. My son graduated from the police academy. So we're all sitting there, you know, all of us are there, you know, at his graduation. And these are normal things. Matter of fact, a few weeks ago, I was in Colorado again, because his mom and I were there helping him move into his new apartment. You know, so just and this is not normal. I want to say that this is not normal by any stretch of the word, but it is a testament to the power of healing of myself and her. Because as I started my journey, she started her own journey. You know, she started her own journey of healing, and so she was able to work through her stuff. And you know, we got to a place of just be a mutual respect for each other. And understanding, listen, let's do this for our kids. We've done enough of the other stuff. Let's focus on this. So it's really good to be able to do that. Like I have to say, last piece of this was that, you know, getting into the place where I am now as a speaker. I'm a keynote speaker. I'm a workshop trainer. I teach classes. I teach anger management. I'm about to start a class with Los Angeles County, the district attorney's office, a diversionary domestic violence class. To where the cases that they would normally drop, but then they really know something happened. And it's like those cases that slip through the cracks, it's like, no, they can take a diversionary class with me. So I'm about to start that class as well. I've taught that class here in San Diego. As Dr. Oliver mentioned, I've traveled to Australia. I've done all branches of the military. And one focus for me is engaging men into this conversation, because we're a lot of times absent, and we think this is a woman's issue. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, this is our issue. We have to, if we're going to stop this issue or address it, men have to be involved in it. Because now men can be involved as those that are causing harm, and there are male victims as well. So, but nonetheless, we need to be involved in it. So that's pretty much where I am today. Right now, I'm a contractor with the Marine Corps Camp Pendleton base here in San Diego. So I give them 25 hours, 15 to 20 hours a week, should I say. And I'm about to start with Los Angeles County. And then I'll have multiple events just like this with Dr. Oliver or IVAD or whatever other conferences come up. But this is my life. I do this full time. I do this all this. I don't have another job. This is what I do. I'm fully into this. I'm grateful for it. I love it. I don't want to do anything else. So I'll stop there. And if anyone has any questions, you can ask. But just wanted to give a baseline.
Yeah, and so Dominique and I will be doing a presentation at talked about IVAT, that's the Institute for Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. And we'll be doing something probably the 19th of August in San Diego at their conference. And we've done it like the last 3 or 4 years, sometimes with two of his sons and Mary and his ex-wife. And we've had conversations, and we've really got a great sort of turnout. But one of the other reasons why I wanted to have Dominique back on with us is, one of the themes that I've heard with Black men when they talk about the issue of domestic violence is the fact that there's a social context around it. And so that there's sometimes pressures that happen on the outside that influence their behavior on the inside. And years ago, I would have conversations with psychologists, and they would say violence is something that you should expect given the challenges that Black men experience. So what I would say when I work with Black men in groups is, so what do you experience? Well, I got stopped by the police, or I've had this pressure on the job, and we've had these experiences. So how did you feel when those things happen? Well, I felt helpless. I felt powerless. I felt like there wasn't much that I could do to be able to respond to it. And that typically in general groups, nobody asks the question, but the other thing is that people don't know how to respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would always ask is, how do you think she feels when you're abusive to her?
Mm-hmm.
And they would say powerless, helpless,
Mm-hmm.
as though that there's no response.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we have to look at the internal abuse, the abuse internally that happens within family, to be able to say, you don't want to respond maladaptively. If you're harming people within the family, that's not adaptive, that's maladaptive. And you've got to find a way to be able to transform and change that, and not to wreak havoc on your family the way that you might do. And there's one comment that when I talked to Dominique, he has a lot of wisdoms, but among the ones that he had when we have had conversations is he talked about how he had to change himself, and he had to learn how to become a safe space for his children to feel as though they could talk to him. And he talked about the fact that his mother-in-law was a safe space for his kids. And he talked about the fact that Mary, his ex-wife, was a safe space for the kids to talk to. But he said he didn't experience him, his kids experienced him.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to learn how to feel safe. And so, Dominic, say a couple of things about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I had to show them that I was safe, because if someone feels that you're not safe, they're not coming to you. You have to go to them and show that you are safe. And so, I'm their father. Of course, they love me, but the safety part was not there. And to provide them with emotional safety was a goal of mine when I finally figured out what I was supposed to be doing. And so the way that I was doing that was just by having conversations with them, spending time with them. And when life happens, they didn't see me blow up anymore. When they tell me things that they've done wrong, I'm not upset about it. I just say, okay, all right, how do we work through this one? Like a normal in my estimation, a normal man would do, who loves his children. It's like, okay, well, let's figure this out. And all of them have had issues, things that'll come up going through their young lives. It's like, okay, all right, well, how do we work through this one? But throughout my journey in healing, that put me in a place of balance, and it balanced me very, very well. And so when I was balanced, I was okay to just deal with whatever came my way. In my abusive days, I was not balanced in any way, shape, or form. And so I couldn't handle little things in life. I couldn't handle small things. And so after my healing journey, life happens, and it's like, okay, all right, I have options. I can figure this out. So with my sons, I wanted to project that energy to them, to let them know that, listen, and there was no formal training. It was just life happening. And as life happened, they started to see, oh, well, Pop's different. Pop's not the same. He's smiling more. He laughs more. He's different. So when I had this welcoming and open energy towards them, they naturally walked in because they wanted relationship. And so throughout these years, it's just been me opening myself up to them in a safe way, but I had to be safe first. And living in a reactive world when they were growing up was something that was burned into their psyche. But then at the same time, I said, well, I'm going to burn this into your psyche as well. You're going to see stability. You're going to see calm. And so that was something for me throughout the healing journey that was very important for me to show their mother. And I don't even like to say show her, because it wasn't intentional. It was just, this is who I am now. Like, this is who I am. So when life happens, like, we even one example of was custody. We were in the family court, and custody came up, and so she was asking for 100% custody. I was like, no, you're not getting. We're going back and forth. It can get ugly in here. And then I remember battling back and forth with her, but then at some point I just said, you know what? I don't like this. I don't like what this is doing to me, and I don't like what it's doing to my kids. And I remember I was in therapy one day, and my therapist asked me, he said, what do you want more than anything else? And it just came out of my mouth without me thinking. I said, peace. I want peace. And I don't even know why I said it. I just said, I want peace. He said, well, you have to do things that promote peace. And so during the he said, you'll get the opportunities. You just have to be ready for them. And so in court that day was an opportunity for peace. So at that moment, we were in court, and we were going through our normal rigmarole and going back and forth against each other. And I just said, I don't like this. I don't want to sit here and have to tell them to talk about she's a horrible mom. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And I was sitting in court, and then the judge, I asked if I can address the court. The judge said yes. I said, Your Honor, I think I want to just be done with this process. Give her full custody. And it was the courtroom was silent. And the judge was like, Mr. Waltower, I said, yeah, no, give her full custody. Whatever else you want. You want the couch? What do you want? Like, what do you want? I'm not fighting. Now, I knew I would see my son, but this was more of a power move. Fine, you can have him. And, the ironic part about it is that after that hearing, I was walking out to my car, and she walks up to me after me, and she said, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? I said, yeah. She was talking to me like that. I was like, why are you talking to me like that? She thought I was suicidal, because those are things that you do when someone's suicidal. They give away things. I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm at peace. I'm at peace with this. I'm not holding on to anything that is going to cause me to lose myself. And that is a declaration that I made to myself. Anything that causes me to lose who I am and lose my place of peace, I will let go of it. That's a relationship, job, money, that's anything. And then I can come back to it after I strategize and figure out a better way to deal with it. So in that moment, I was able to let go of that. And then ironically enough, 9 months later, the boys came to stay with me. They're like, Pop, we want to come live with you. I was like, you talk to your mom about it? Talk to your mom. And I talked to her. She's like, yeah, I think it's a good idea. I was like, okay, cool, fine. And then she was worried, because she's like, oh, but what about the child support and all this? I was like, listen, I'm not about to do all that stuff. If you want to provide. If you don't, it is what it is. I'm not fighting. I'm done. When I say done, I mean done. I'm not fighting anything. And throughout that process, those are examples of me creating, as Dr. O was talking about, a safe environment just creating a safe and not fighting. Like, because normally when it comes to children, that's a battle that's going to go on to the end of time. We're going to battle for these. I said, no, nope.
Right.
I'm gonna go the opposite direction, and I'm not. And I just knew to do it. I didn't consult with anyone. I just knew that this was the right thing to do for that moment. And it's like, I'm not going to anything that causes me to lose myself, I will release. And that's law for me at this point. It's law. I don't operate in anything that causes me to go to dark thoughts or nope, I'm not doing it. So throughout those moments and throughout these years, it's been natural moments that occur. And then how I respond to those moments is what creates the safe environment. So, and then my kids are watching, they're seeing the things that happen. I remember I was driving in the car with Skip, and then we got a flat tire on the freeway, and he's panicking. I was like, it's okay. This is natural. We're just gonna pull over. This is what we're gonna do. Blah, blah, blah. There's no, now before I would have blew up. Oh, damn, I would have lost it. And so now it's me showing him, no, life happens. It's okay. Like we have the means to fix it. Like, it's all right. So it's just natural moments that will come up, and then how I would respond, show them that, it's safe. And then from that moment, then, they started to come to me a lot more, and they were pouring their hearts out, and they were just saying, and I gave them permission, speak your truth. Speak your truth. I don't want you walking around with pain that I caused. Now, I love you that much. I will take that. I don't say to parenting, oh, I did the best I could. I don't say that. Because if I did the best I could, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I could have done better. I will always say that. I will say that because I don't want my children walking around holding any pain from me that I could release them from. If I can release them, and I know about them, and even the conversations that even the things that I don't remember, because they brought up things I don't remember. And so I don't say to them, well, I don't remember, that didn't happen. I say, I don't remember, but I trust you. If you telling me about it, you went through it, you know what? And I'm sorry. I am sorry for that, because it sounds like something I would have did back in those days.
I gotta have a talking stick, because I'm just up here about to have church. Because what I'm hearing from you, really what I'm hearing from you, is you became safe within yourself. Then you could be safe with others.
Yes.
Because we teach so much about self-talk and internal language and having that dialogue and that pact with yourself. And today, when you're talking about, if it's going to take my peace, if it's going to break me down, it's going to make me slide back, I'm letting it go. Now, the trick of that is that that's an intentional and also unintentional process. Somehow you had to get to that space where you said, to hell with this, I gotta let this go. I'm losing me. And that's where I think I would love to see people go in all kinds of relationships, whether it be a bad job, a bad boyfriend, a bad marriage, a bad parenting situation. To get to that space took time, effort, truth, and work. And I would like you, I don't want people thinking, oh, I wish that would happen to me miraculously like it happened to him. You already talked about, you worked your butt off to get to it. So could you tell us a little more about that internal fight and how you ended up going, I'm more important than this issue. I'm more important being a true man, a healthy man, than winning. And my husband has ones that he has one that he always says, he says, do I want to be happy, or don't I want to be right? And he chooses happiness over being the one that proves it's always right. So tell me a little bit about what we can do to hold people until they get to that space, how we can help them get to it, I hope, faster by learning and healing and believing that it's a possibility, and hearing brothers like you that it's not so far-fetched that it's not impossible for them to learn. Just fluff that piece out for me. I'm so excited to hear about how you got safe with you.
Can I, before you say it, Dominique, the one thing I want to say, and then I want to hear your wisdom. The difference with Dominique versus the person that's in the White House.
Oh, Lord.
is the fact that Dominique could say when he's wrong,
Yep.
could figure out the fact that he needed to grow,
Mm-hmm.
could try to figure out what the challenges are and then work on correcting those challenges.
There you go. That's
Versus a person that doesn't have the capacity to do it.
right. Or
Because that
desire.
person could never grow.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, the work that Dominique did internally. But Dominique, that's a comment I had to make.
Yeah.
So, what's your wisdom around it?
To your question, Dr. B, first is it's a decision that you make. When you think of the word decide, side, suicide, homicide, fratricide, side, death, something has to die when you decide.
Ooh.
When I decided to become a better man, the option to be who I was dead. It's not an option anymore. So it was a decision. And I'm not some special person who didn't know. I'm somebody who just didn't like who I was. And I wanted better. And if I wanted better, then I had to do better. So I wasn't expecting better to come to me, knock on my door, or show up in the mail. No, I knew I was the creator of my reality. And so if my reality is not good, then there's something I have to do different. I have to do something different. In that journey and the work that you talked about, Dr. B, is in the therapy. And in therapy was where I picked up something that I had never really understood before therapy. And I picked up self-love. For the first time in my life, I started to love who I was. I mean, genuinely love who I was. I started to, when I got that PhD in me, I started to learn everything about myself. And I started, I was like, I got some flaws. Okay, I'm going to fix those. I got some great things about me. I'm going to enhance those. And I started to love myself. And when you love yourself, when you move through this world with self-love, you refuse to let anything come between that. And so that's when, I made that declaration to myself. If something causes me to lose myself and lose my self-love and step outside of my peace, that's where I have to let that go. I have to let it go because I love myself more. And my self-love, this is not a selfish or arrogant thing. It's like the self-love that I have, is an abundance of love. And then that just spills out onto whoever I'm around. If someone's around me, you're going to get it too. You're going to get this love too. You're going to get this love to whoever's. I'm like Oprah, you get the love, everybody's going to get it. Whoever I'm around, they're going to get it because that's how I naturally am. I was in a class teaching anger management on base one day, and this lady, I was asking them, I said, hey, I don't experience me. None of us experience ourselves. The people around us do. And then I said, I don't experience me. I don't know how you guys are taking me in this class. And one of the ladies said, she said, yeah, you know what? You're a really good teacher and all that, but I don't know if this is real. She said, I don't know if this is real. And then my coworker, who I've been working with for like 4 years, she was like, yeah, trust me, it's real. This is who he is. Like, this is who he is. Like, I've seen him outside of here. Who you see right here is exactly who he is. And so this love that I carry, it goes everywhere with me. You're not going to see me in the parking lot arguing with somebody over a parking space. It goes to work. It goes to personal relationships, professional relationship, the parking lot, it goes everywhere. So nowhere am I in a space where I'm going to lose who I am. But it was a decision. It started with a decision that I don't want to be that anymore. And I had to go through a place of forgiving that version of me who used to be like that. I had to go back and visit that young man, and I had to love on him and just forgive myself. And that's where all the love came from. So when this is not something, Dr. B, that's far-fetched that people can't attain. We just have to decide that we want it. And I'm never one to discredit a person's decision. When we decide on something, Dr. Oliver decided to retire. Look at him now, all retired. Look at him, when you decide to do something, and I just think about things we decided to do today. I'm deciding to go get coffee. I'm deciding to have a talk with my son. I'm deciding to do this. When we decide something, that's when the action happens. So in a nutshell, for me, it was really deciding that I wanted to be better and then starting to do that work to get better. Because, one of my coaches used to say when I used to play football, he said, if you want something you never had, you have to do things you've never done. And so I had never done therapy like that before. So I said, well, I know if I go to therapy, I have a chance of getting better, And so when I did that, and I started to develop a sense of myself, and then I started developing a love of myself, and then it just took off from there. And there was no going back. One of the guys said, he's like, do you ever feel like you'll go? I was like, that part's done. That's done. That's not coming back. Like I said, and I've used that mechanism before. I've been in relationships since then. And some of the relationships I had, I was like, no, I don't like this. This is not good for me. And I would talk to the person about it. If it changed, fine, we'll continue. If it doesn't change, well, I need to step away from this because it's not good for me. And it's not good for you either. So I'm not married to any connection other than the connection of self-love and then generating peace and walking in my purpose. That's what I'm married to. I'm anything else is optional for me. So, but I truly believe that this is not something that is, it's not something that's far-fetched for people. Do you want it? Do you want it? Like, do you want it? Because you all decided to go get PhDs. That's a decision. Look at you now. That's how it works. And I just feel like, for me, deciding to love and value myself, once I got a hold of that, it was a wrap. It was done. I'm not ever going back to that, where I was. Ever. So I just wanted to answer that question. Hopefully that did answer. Dr. O, your question was about me. How did you say that? You said something I said to you. I'm sorry, I forgot what that was. You said that I'm drawing a blank on.
Well, among the things that I've thought about is the fact that you started to create safe spaces for you and your children, the things that you talked about with regard to you and Mary, interacting, which was interesting too, because when we talked about beginning to do the work that we did, Mary and Dominique came to Minnesota so I could videotape them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've done presentations a couple times in San Diego and with the boys and such. But the thing that sort of impressed me the most is the comment that you just made in terms of other people, you didn't experience other people did, and you had to figure out ways to be able to prepare yourself, but also to become insightful in terms of how your children experienced you. So you could become a safe space. And you did that with them when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
So they could experience you but also learn from you as they got older. And the thing that why I thought it was so important for you to have the conversation today was, this issue in terms of our environment and how uncomfortable we feel because of our environment these days. And I think that sometimes the displacement happens where you say, this is the cause of why I'm feeling this way. And then people use it as a excuse to be abusive to other people. And I think one thing that I think is real important is the fact that we can't use those things as a justification to be abusive towards others.
Mm-hmm.
We have to realize that other people may have feelings similar to what we feel, but they can't use those things as justifications for doing abuse to oneself or doing abuse to someone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that one has to sort of become reflective of how we feel, but choose other ways to behave.
That's right.
And what can we do to become more adaptive rather than maladaptive? So if
I'm gonna just really quick, in the classes I teach, one of the things that I picked up during my healing journey was developing an internal locus of control.
Yeah.
So when I locus of control for me was powerful when I learned what that was. Like, wait a
And
minute.
explain what locus of
Locus of
control
control,
is.
there's two types of locus of control. There's external and internal locus of control. Okay. Locus of control is how you feel that your life is affected by either internal or external events. So based on what you were talking about, Dr. O, it's the environment. The environment is why I acted this way. That's an external locus of control because the environment is external. And
Right.
so the way I behave is because she said this or she did that, or if she hadn't done this, I had an external locus of control. So I didn't. And when I was going through my healing journey, I remember this concept I learned in my psychology class. And when I was in school, I developed an internal. It doesn't matter what's happening out there. Now, I can acknowledge what's happening. Yes. You know what? This person did this. They're doing that. The world is this, blah, blah, blah. I don't like it, but I'm still in control of myself. I'm in control of me. So an internal locus of control is where you take responsibility for your life and all the decisions that happen in it. Of course, there's influences that happen outside of it, but there's never going to be an action that I take. And it's like, well, I did this because of them. Well, they said this to me. So it's not going to be a reactionary thing. And so this is something that I teach in class, and I thought about it as you were saying this right now, Dr. O. Internal locus of control is where we take control over our behavior. We take responsibility and accountability for our behavior, no matter what's happening. It's like, hey, the person cheated on me. Okay, that's really, really horrible. I'm still responsible for my behavior after that. I'm still responsible for my whatever. They took my kids. Yes, that's horrible. I'm still responsible for my behavior after that.
Right.
Ultimate accountability, because that keeps me safe and everyone else around me safe. And if someone is doing something harmful to me, then maybe I shouldn't be with that person. There's a thought. Maybe it's time for me to distance and go and heal. I'm going to stop there. But you triggered that thought when you said that, Dr. O. I did pick up locus of control. And instead of trying to control others, control me. Duh.
I wanted to, Brother Dominique, thank you so much for this powerful instruction and demonstration of the path towards healing. I wanted to get a sense more of your own personal training, development, work, who you are. And two things you mentioned early on is that you were a witness to abuse in your parents' families, and then it showed up in your family. So my question was, if you would describe the range of abuse. You say the word abuse, what typically comes to mind, I think, is somebody laying hands on somebody, or
Right.
it could be manipulating the money, making somebody feel bad. So that's sort of mental and psychological abuse. But describe what you came to observe as abuse in those relationships that you were the young person in, and
Right.
then the process of identifying and recognizing and deciding to deal with those same characteristics in you as you discovered them. I'm sure you must have felt you were just okay. You were, who you were is who you were, right? And that's kind of the world that you inherited and were brought into and were acculturated by. But you went through a process, and I'm also, lastly, wanting you to say more about the value, the power of therapy. I think that if I'm doing therapy, I think that we as Black men don't embrace that resource enough. And so all we can do to encourage other people to discover, find, use, grow through therapy, I think we should do. So that's my whole picture. We're going to be a little over the time, but I'm okay with going longer. If you are Dr. B, Dr. Williams, I think this is just a great conversation. And I was waiting to the end to give my 2 cents in, because I didn't want to interrupt the flow that you were delivering and the great questions from Dr. Oliver and Dr. B. This has been a wonderful program, but let's keep it rolling if you're okay with that for a few minutes.
I'm okay with that. And to your point about the therapy, it is an important thing. I want to just put that out there. Black men, Black women, I don't care what race you are, we all can benefit from it. It is a positive thing, and I'm grateful that it's becoming more and more normalized. The younger generation is they're talking about it more, and I'm happy about that. I'm glad. Any chance I get, I'm saying it with my whole chest, go to therapy. and it was the best thing. I'm saying it. I will say it till I'm blue in the face. I will talk about mental health. I will talk about my depression as I was going through this divorce, and as I was shifting my life from who I used to be to this new person. It was hell. It was hard, and thank God I had a therapist that I can go and bounce things off of and talk to about my issues and how I was feeling. So that was really, really important. When it comes to the different types of abuse, you can talk about physical abuse. Again, that's what we think of the most with physical abuse. Physical abuse is actually probably the least common part of abuse. What we're seeing more is verbal abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse. So when you think about emotional abuse and then you think of psychological abuse, let's take those two. Emotional abuse is controlling how a person feels. Psychological abuse is controlling how a person thinks. Those two are intertwined. They're intertwined, but you'll see those, they happen through words. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm not abusive because I don't hit them. But you can hit with words. You can hit with words, and emotional abuse happens that way. You also have financial abuse, as you mentioned. Abusers will use finances in a sense, they'll use finances to control the victim. So in my case, my spouse and I made the same amount of money, or she may actually made more money than me. And so that was not an issue for us, but I still had the other issues. I had spiritual abuse. I had my scriptures lined up. Let me go and put that out there. I had my scriptures. I said, well, the Bible says blah, 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 blah. You're supposed to using that to try to get her to obey what it was that I was saying. And I remember one day she said something to me, and she said, this never left me. She said to me, we were in the middle of an argument. I said something like that, trying to exert power and control. And she said, I will never respect a man like you. And that hit me so hard. I couldn't even come back. I couldn't even say anything back. Because you know why? I knew what she was saying was true. Mm-hmm. I knew it was true because I was using all of these things to try to control her. And she was coming out of that. And she was like, I'm done with this. So there are multiple layers of abuse: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, sexual. Sexual abuse is another one that comes up that people don't talk about. Sexual abuse happens in domestic abuse relationships where the spouse takes over that other person's sexuality and just dominates them. Because in a lot of these domestic abuse relationships, the victim's body, they don't have their own autonomy. They don't have their own autonomy. So in a lot of the cases, I remember, working with a case recently where, the abuser set up the circumstance. Well, hey, you stay home, you don't work, you don't go to school. So everything was controlled by this person. Everything was controlled, physical, sexual, everything. And so everything had to go through that person. So growing up, I saw a lot of the physical. What I saw as a kid mainly was physical abuse. I saw the emotional abuse. I saw the psychological abuse. You talk about gaslighting, you talk about emotional manipulation. I saw those things that were happening. Those are the main ones that I saw when I was a kid growing up. But there's a range of abuse. It's not just physical. Again, physical is probably the least prevalent. The main thing is the words that are being said, the emotions that are being played with, the gaslighting. When someone had someone say this recently, one of the Marines I was working with was like, oh, I was grabbing her by the shoulders and my hand slipped around her throat. And I was like, I said, bro, don't ever say that again. Don't ever. That sounds like a 4-year-old. That's it. Let's just call it what it is. But these things, these type of issues, there's so many. There's such a range of different behaviors. But by and large, those areas: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, sexual. That's the range of abuse. And again, sometimes people think that, somebody yelling at you is not that bad. I grew up, I grew up in the 70s, 80s, if you grew up that was normal standard procedure, but now that we know better, we should be doing better. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I talk about, but it's definitely something that helped me to get, going through the process of counseling, therapy, and growing helped me to understand this stuff better. But to end on that point, what you were saying, therapy, again, it is something that I'll say this: I wouldn't be here had it not been for that. Let me just put that out there. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. I would not be here. And it's scary, and we're taught not to tell them people your business, but you know, I'm telling a stranger. I'd rather tell a stranger. You know what? I'll tell a stranger, and they're trained in this area. They're trained, and I talk about them as the emotional doctors. I tell people in my classes, I say, listen, if you have a cut on your neck, where are you going? You're going to the physical doctor so they can help you. If you have an emotional cut, which most of us have, go to the emotional doctor. Help them, have them help you to heal those your own wounds, and they'll heal the relationship. Lastly, people often will talk about the desire for healthy relationships, the desire for healthy marriage. And I say, well, that, you know, that starts with you, right? It's not about finding another person. It's about you becoming that person. When you become that person, then you can actually choose, you know, better circumstances, and you will reject circumstances that are not healthy. No matter how cute they are, how handsome. Nope. I see this from a mile away. And so, but that comes from healing, which came from counseling, therapy, coaching. I recommend going to individual and group because there's a different dynamic in both places. Individual is where you're gonna dive in deep, and then group maybe not dive so deep because there's other people around there, but you're going to hear other people's story. You'll bounce things off of them. But it's a very, very important dynamic that I think all of us should be visiting at some point in time, hopefully.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. I have to go, guys, but y'all
let's call it here. This is a great meeting. Thank you so much, Brother Dominique. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you, Dr. B.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for listening. We'll see you all next time. Take care.
Y'all be well. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.